Welcome, my fellow photographer friend, to another episode of the Shine and Thrive Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Monica, and I am really excited about today's topic. It's something I'm really passionate about. And it's because, I'm passionate about it because on this podcast and through my teachings in the online courses that I've created for photographers, I am huge on empowering you to let go of the quote unquote, I should do this, and instead make decisions in your business from a place of I want and I get to, and from a place of creating from, a place from the inside out, like what you want in your actual life and business. And again, not comparing yourself, not creating from a place of I should based on what other people are doing. And so today I'm so excited to inspire you to see the benefits of going against the grain and doing things your way in a way that lights you up. Okay. You, not anyone else, you. So let's talk about industry standard. So what is even industry standard? And pretty much that's someone at some point deciding to do something one way and then a lot of people following it, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just kind of like what it is. Someone at some point had the first idea on how to maybe innovate something or change something or just like start doing it in one way. And then most people are like, oh, yeah, that works. And then they followed, right? So it becomes industry standard for a handful of reasons. Number one, people don't have to think of a new solution on their own. So it's pretty much an easy way out, right? Number two, people don't question why the person did it that way. And then they move on to think automatically that it's just how it's done within the industry, right? Again, this is why I teach so much of the why on the podcast in my courses, because I always want you to think for yourself and make sure you make the choice that is best for you instead of just doing it because I'm doing it or someone else is doing it, right? A third reason why things become industry standard is as humans, it's obviously uncomfortable to go against the grain, pretty much against the herd, right? We want to belong. And industry standard can feel like the safe bet because we're not ruffling any feathers. We're not changing things up too much to maybe potentially make other people feel uncomfortable or angry or upset that things are changing. So we just want to kind of like stay safe, stay comfortable. So I want to also say, like everything in life, like there's nothing inherently bad with quote unquote industry standards because there are obviously benefits to it. So benefit number one, it saves the energy of the collective to not have to problem solve and innovate every single step of the way. So for example, if you're modeling off how another photographer does things, it actually helps guide you to start your photography business faster and problem solve faster. So obviously that's a huge benefit, right? Another amazing benefit of industry standard is number two, some of those industry standard solutions are a very positive benefit to that industry and they work really well for most. So for example, I'm trying to think, like for example, online gallery systems, right? Like PicTime, Pixieset, to deliver digital images to clients. Like those are an incredible innovation. I think they're an amazing industry standard because they've been able to replace DVDs and USBs, and like our couples, our clients are able to share their images so much easier with all of their guests and friends and family, as well as even design like custom print products directly from that online gallery. And for us as photographers, we don't have to get a physical thing, put it on there, spend that time, deliver it, all that kind of thing. So there are benefits, right? But I want you to think this way. If everyone always stuck to that way of doing things, there would be no innovation and no collective growth. So if there was no person that would just do things a little bit differently, go against the grain, we'd always stay stuck as a collective, right? So, okay, one example that I want to touch on right now is I see a trend popping up right now with GIFs, right? GIFs within, I would say, like the wedding photography space, portrait photography. And this is because at some point in the past couple of years, one photographer pioneered that, and now it's becoming more popular. So they had the idea to, document a certain moment on a wedding day or during a portrait session with a whole bunch of photos and stick them together into a GIF and create an animation like that, right? So one thing that's really interesting is at some point, these GIFs could actually become quote unquote industry standard, where many of our clients will assume that they will automatically get a GIF or multiple GIFs, right? So it could be a trend, it could stay as a trend, or it could become industry standard. Now, again, this isn't a bad thing, because for those photographers that are actually passionate about creating GIFs, this is amazing because they have found a new way of being creative and also adding value to the clients they attract, right? But, and I want you to pay attention, this is the whole point of this episode. For those photographers that are now creating GIFs, and this could be you, maybe, who knows, right? Because you feel like you have to be successful, that is pretty much where you are selling your soul to the devil, as they say, because you are literally creating from a place of fear that if you don't produce that thing, that you will stop booking clients or you won't be able to quote unquote keep up with the industry and become kind of irrelevant, right? Well, so many of us can easily have that fear pop up, right? But I want you to remember the law of attraction. Okay, like attracts like. So like energy attracts like energy. So if you are feeling fearful that you won't book clients unless you do this, unless you create these GIFs, then that will become your reality. Okay. And the same is true with the opposite. If you are confident that you can still book clients without creating GIFs and offering exactly what you offer, that is exactly what you will attract. So I want you to remember this. There will always be a market for exactly what you want to offer and not what you think you should offer. So the main thing you have to just focus on doing is communicating the value of what you offer clearly and effectively, and then you will be golden. So an example that comes to mind, like just to like give you an analogy or a metaphor, maybe like when people go to a coffee shop, for example, right? Does everyone want and order the same thing? No, right? When one day a coffee shop started to innovate years and years ago and started offering whipped cream on top of coffee, for example, did everyone as a consumer want that? No, right? So same applies here. Not everyone will value and want GIFs. And actually, straight up example from my own experience, one of my wedding clients actually wrote me this in their questionnaire last year when they were answering one of my questions in the questionnaire. And they said this, they're like, we really love your candid work and we want you to just focus on that. And they said, oh, and no GIFs, please. Like they specifically said that. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting because I literally have not created a GIF ever. I don't show them, I don't post them. But maybe with them being in Instagram land, they probably saw that this was like a thing that was like happening and maybe it's becoming popular and trendy. So they specifically said, like, that's not what we value. Please, like, don't put your energy and effort into that. Like, we don't need that, right? So that's an example of a client that exists in this world that, yeah, doesn't find value in GIFs, right? And that's okay. And if there's one example of that client, that means there's so many more examples of other clients. Oh my gosh, I'm recording this episode as I'm still pregnant. Actually, to be specific, I'm 35 weeks pregnant. For those of you that are like, what the hell is 35 weeks? You're trying to calculate it in your head. It's about 8 months. And I'm like so out of breath right now. I'm like, no, why? And I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have worn a bra. Maybe that would have been easier. Okay, but moving on. So another example of this is engagement sessions, right? So many of you know that those of you that are wedding photographers, not everyone wants an engagement session, right? So the beauty is you can literally custom create whatever experience you want to provide and be fully booked for it. So for example, if you want every single couple of yours to have an engagement session with you and you don't take them on as clients if they don't want that, then you can simply realize that it's not a good fit and then leave that space, that booking available for a couple that will come along for that experience that you provide and find value in it. So one person that comes to mind is Scarlett O'Neill. She's a great example of this. She's a photographer in Toronto. But the only thing is, like, don't quote me because I don't know if she does this anymore, but I do remember like years ago hearing that that's exactly what she did. And every single one of her wedding clients, she like required that they do an engagement session with her because it was part of her process and how she worked best. And it was the value that she wanted to create and bring. So maybe she has changed things to like since then to stay aligned with her, evolving as a photographer. Maybe she has, but at one point she was able to do that and successfully fully book her season while getting literally every single couple to say yes to an engagement session and finding the value in it. Another great example of someone, sticking to their guns and like doing what they want as an artist and being fully booked, is Chewy. Like Chewy. I always like fuck up his name whenever I read it, and I'm like, Sarah, it's easy. It's Chewy, right? So if you don't follow Chewy on Instagram, I mean, he's incredible. I actually don't know his exact handle, but you can just type in CHUY, Chewy, and it could be like Chewy Photos or something. I don't remember. But he only takes on intimate sessions for couples where they are naked and like intimate and super close. And he actually does create beautiful, like just art filled like gifts for his couples as well. So that's his specialty. That's what he focuses on. That's what he offers. And he is a great example of this because he has found so much success. And of course, he now feels so aligned with himself as a human, as an artist. And then the couples that book him, they feel so aligned and connected with him and his work. So it's just like, that's where the magic happens, right? Another example of like going against the grain and going against industry standard, I wanted to make sure I filled this episode up with so many examples because I think examples paint such a good picture of what is actually the reality and the truth in our world instead of our minds making up fears that then stop us from actually going after what we want. Because really, I don't even know where I heard this. I wish I knew. But fear stands for false reality. No, false, F-E, false evidence appearing real. Isn't that so good? False evidence appearing real. So whenever I feel fear, I'm just like, yeah, but Sarah, it's not real. Like it's literally made up in your head. Like, why are you basing your life decisions on something that's not even real yet? It's just a thing that your mind made up, like a calculation that your mind made up. So yeah, this episode is full of examples just to help reprogram yourself from those limiting beliefs and for you to see what is actually possible for you. Okay, so another example, as I mentioned, if you want to offer all day wedding photography coverage instead of hourly and not ever deviate from that, like pretty much say, I only offer all day coverage for weddings and that's it. No, I will not make an exception for a 6-hour day or 8-hour day. Like I create the photo timeline I think I need as an artist based on your story of the day, and that's how I operate. Then guess what? You can do that. Like you don't have to offer 8-hour, 10-hour packages, 12-hour packages. I'm a great example of this. I literally never book a wedding based on hours. My all-day wedding photography coverage is a minimum requirement, and I book like 30 weddings a year easily with an average of $6,000 per wedding at that. And you might be thinking, okay, Sarah, like it's so easy for you now with like X amount of followers and blah, 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 and so much experience in your, in your career with being a wedding photographer, with you being in it for 11 years now. Well, let me tell you, I decided to make this switch, which felt scary. It did feel scary, but I decided to feel the fear and do it anyway because it was aligned with me. I decided to offer this 7 years ago and stick to it. So that was about 3 or 4 years into my career. And yes, it felt scary that I would be turning away potential clients, but like I just knew that like that fear was just my ego trying to protect me. And if I wanted to become more successful, and not more successful, if I wanted to become successful, and to me, success is being able to do what I want when I want as an artist, it opens up my true actual potential of what I'm able to create and not hold back. I knew that I wanted to do it this way, in a way that stayed true to myself. Because I knew that when I stayed true to myself, that's when I have the energy to create my best work for others. So I did this 7 years ago. I transitioned from like that, offering those hourly packages and kind of just sticking to my truth, explaining the value of what that meant for my couples. And because I did such a good job at explaining why it was of value to them, they easily saw like, oh, okay, yeah, I love actually that you offer this. And yeah, let's book you for this. And ever since then, I have only been booking wedding days for that kind of coverage. And the only time I kind of, deviated from that was during like the start of the pandemic, when I was getting inquiries for like smaller, elopements and this and that. And, everything was so up in the air that, of course, I was like open to, pivoting and accommodating people's stories during this time, since they needed shorter amount of time of coverage, since maybe only 10 people could attend, right? So of course, like I stayed kind of flexible through that time, and I saw the beauty in being able to still document a wedding day in 4 hours time based on that kind of story of the day. But for like full on like wedding days that I was booking like a year out to 2 years out, I'm not gonna just settle and say, okay, yeah, a year from now, just because I'm scared I might not book that date, I'll accept a 6 hour like wedding day booking. It's like, no, I'm believing that if I stay true to myself and exactly what I'm looking for and need, that those people will show up and book me for that time. And I'm telling you, it works. Like as long as I always just stay in faith that it'll work out for me. It has been working for me since 7 years ago, since I decided to stick to it. Okay, so this is just another proof point that that's possible for you too. Another thing I want to mention is, like, if you don't stay true to yourself along the way, not only are you going to be doing yourself a disservice, but I really do believe you're also like doing a disservice for the people that you're photographing, because they're not getting all of you. They're not getting the full potential of you, if that makes sense. Like, you will also end up resenting your clients, by the way, when you're really in the end just resenting yourself for not saying no to that kind of work, right? Or like not saying, or sorry, not keeping the space available for only offering the work that lights you up. So that kind of like resentment cycle of like resenting your clients, but really you're just resenting yourself. It's not a fun cycle to be in and to be stuck in, because when you get stuck in that cycle, it's so much harder to get out, and it feels harder to get out. It's still possible to get out, but the reason I'm sharing all of this with you is just so you can proactively start thinking this way, so that you can avoid even getting into that cycle. And maybe you're in it. Who knows? You're probably in it. I know I've been in it in the beginning stages of starting my photography business, because you're learning so many different things of how to run a business, how to shoot, how to attract different clients. And you're learning about like what kind of clients you like to work with, what kind of clients you don't like to work with. You're also learning, do I prefer shooting shorter elopements, or do I prefer longer, bigger wedding days? Like, you're learning all of these things. So maybe you do feel stuck in that cycle. But the good news is that as long as you just tune inward, tune into yourself, and pay attention to those things that light you up, and pay attention to the things that make you happy, and just start saying yes to those things moving forward, start implementing that into your workflows, into your experiences that you're sharing with the world, that you are offering into your price guides. That is when you can get out of that cycle where you're not fully happy, into a new cycle of just like limitless possibility, being so happy with what you're offering, being so aligned with what you're offering. And on top of that, people literally booking you for you doing your dream work. Okay. And whenever you feel in doubt about this, again, think back to all the examples that I mentioned, and just look at examples, positive examples of other photographers that are doing exactly what you want to do. So if you want to be a destination wedding photographer that's nomadic and travels the world and is able to tell wedding love stories that way, like if someone else is doing it, it's so possible for you too. And then you get to learn from them, you get to model from them. But remember that every step of the way, if you learn something from someone else that you're looking up to, that somehow doesn't feel 100% right, but you get an idea of how to make that idea yours, make it yours. This is what this whole episode is about. Make that idea, kind of like remix it, right? Remix it to a way that like makes you feel good about implementing it into your business instead of it feeling off. Okay, that is how you create those aligned decisions. And that's what I want you to pay attention to. That's the energy I want you to pay attention to. It should feel like a yes, okay, this is exactly what I've been missing. This feels so right. This feels so aligned with me instead of, okay, well, if they're doing it, I think I should. Like, if they're doing it, it's probably industry standard. I should. That's what you want to avoid. Okay. So I want you to get excited about innovating in your own little way. Innovation doesn't have to be big, right? It could be like little things that you just do a little bit differently that sets you apart from other photographers. And then people that are reaching out to you notice that and they're like, oh, I haven't actually seen anyone do that. Um, those are the responses that I get so often with just little things that I do differently. So yes, keep that in mind. Okay, so now back to GIFs, because I'm not done with that little topic. So for me personally, and I've thought about this like pretty much as soon as I started noticing GIFs popping up more, and I noticed my ego reacting in a way that was trying to protect me by saying, oh, maybe I need to learn how to do this to keep up. Like that's literally the thought that went through my head. And I'm sure you're listening to this and you probably had that thought too, right? It's totally normal. Oh, everyone's creating reels now. Oh, maybe I should create them because I need to keep up, right? So that is just your ego trying to protect you, trying to keep you in survival mode, which is a good thing. Like we need our ego in order to like literally survive, right? As humans on this planet. Like we need it. It has benefits, right? But it also can take us down a dark hole of comparisonitis, of shoulds. And as you know, if you don't create from a place of alignment, you're going to go down the direction of what I should do. And then you won't really be happy or fulfilled or create the best work you can create, right? So I had that thought. And then on top of that, I even had the thoughts of like jealousy straight up, like, oh man, like those photographers are doing it so beautifully. And I don't even know how to do that. And like they're so much better than me in that sense. Like I straight up was jealous when I would see someone do such a beautiful job with that. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I think important to be self-aware of those thoughts because then you know where you're acting from. So as soon as I noticed those thoughts pop up, I got silent within myself and I paid really close attention to them passing through my mind. And then I got curious. I'm like, why am I thinking those thoughts? And I realized that if I were to now start creating GIFs, it would be out of a place of trying to keep up with industry standard and not from a place of excitement and creativity. So the difference would be if I saw a photographer create these GIFs, and I saw this example on Instagram, if I was like, if it was an idea that genuinely excited me to discover and to learn about, I think my reaction would be something more like, oh my God, that's so cool. I didn't even think of that. I want to learn how to do that. That would be my initial reaction instead of, oh crap, this is where the industry is going now. Maybe I need to learn how to do this to keep up, right? Do you see the difference? So if you had the reaction of like, oh my God, that is so cool. Like I would be so excited to create that for my couples or my families or whoever, like then that means that creating GIFs could probably be in line, is most likely in alignment with you, right? So because I didn't feel that surge of excitement and creativity, I felt more of like a heavy energy and like I should start doing this, right? I asked myself, well, why would I want to put that burden on myself? Right? Like doing that would have blocked me from going after the things that I am actually meant to be spending time on, and doing the things that excite me and don't feel like work to me, right? So, straight up, creating gifts to me would feel like a lot more work than an exciting adventure. Now, I want to say this is how I feel right now with where I am on my journey. Who knows, in 2 to 3 years from now, I could easily become obsessed with gifts, right? And that's great. Who knows? The whole point of this is to stay on the path that is in alignment with what gets you genuinely excited now, right? Because that is where I believe effortless success is created. And I speak from experience, guys. Like when I took actions from a place of alignment of what I really desired, I began to attract my dream clients at a dream rate because I felt so confident and excited in what I had to offer, and they felt that. And what ended up happening is that the fear slowly diminished, right? Because my brain started literally receiving proof points that it was working. And so the fear slowly dissipates. And what ends up happening is booking another wedding client for me, at full all day coverage, something that was once scary for me to offer, is as effortless as thinking, I'm hungry. I want to go to the kitchen now and get a snack. It ends up feeling like, oh, yeah, like, of course they booked with me. Like, we're a perfect match and I know I can make them happy with my work. Like, it becomes that feeling, right? And of course, whenever someone's like, yeah, we want to move forward to book with you, I still get that excited feeling. But it more so comes from a place of knowing that, well, yeah, like, I know what I have to offer and I'm not surprised that they find so much value in it and are excited to book with me, right? And that's the place I want to help you get to, is that kind of place of confidence, because it's so much more fun and effortless to run your business from that place of confidence than a place of like stress and like what if and fears and I don't know if they'll book with me, right? And so I'm pretty much, ever since I everything that I teach in my CCM course, for those of you that are longtime listeners, I have my Crystal Clear Marketing mini course out there. Everything that I've kind of like put into place to market my business from a place of true alignment, is what I teach in that course. And ever since I did those things, my business became so effortless to operate because I was simply doing me. And people simply felt that energy off me, saw the value, and then just like booked me with no questions asked. And by no questions asked, I mean, because you're like, wait, what do you mean no questions asked? Is that even possible? By no questions asked, I mean, I've done the work to pre-answer any questions that my ideal clients would have that would be the barrier to them saying yes to working with me. So on my website, through Instagram, and then on top of that, my pricing, my investment PDF, like when they reach out, I send them my PDF. It takes them through the experience they'll have with me, the collections, FAQs, testimonials, all of that, to then paint a very clear picture, which leads them to being like, yes, you're an amazing fit. The price is good for us. We're good to go, or no, right? So this is pretty much how, to this day, for the past 7 years, I don't even need to do sales calls to book weddings because people simply inquire. I send them the info and they reply yes or no. And of course, this is like, it's so hard to say usually something is 100% of the time, because I still get like one or two couples that are like, oh, can we like connect with you over like a Zoom or chat or FaceTime just to make sure we're a good fit, right? So this is me just saying like 95, 98% of the wedding bookings that I get, the couples just say yes or no over email. And I've made that process really simple and smooth. And keep in mind that I'm able to consistently book as many weddings as I want. So the number changes each year depending on what chapter I'm in my life. But usually I love about 30 weddings, and this could change. But yeah, I easily consistently book about 30 weddings a year at an average of $6,000 per wedding, doing things the way I want to do them, right? So offering all day coverage only, not including gifts, and on top of that, not offering a second photographer. Like, I shoot on my own, and this is pretty much 99% of the time. It's pretty much 100%. But there's always like that one maybe situation within 3 or 4 years where it's like, okay, like the location is like 2 hours away. And if I just have a second photographer document the first part of the day, it's like an exception, which just makes more sense, right? Life isn't black and white. But overall, yes, I shoot 100% pretty much on my own. And this is another great example, right, of something that I've gone against the grain within the industry for the past 7 years, ever since I made the decision to always shoot on my own, because I realized that that's what made me happiest. That's how I performed my best. And this is another great example for you on how you can also go against industry standard if it's not a good fit for you. So again, there's nothing wrong to be shooting with a second photographer if that helps you as a photographer operate at your highest level and it's what you feel aligned with. That is an incredible value add to your whole process, right? But I personally never felt that way whenever I had a second photographer when I first started. Like, for some reason, it just didn't feel right to me. They felt more in the way, and I was more distracted by them than anything. And I wanted to like pop in and get the angle they were getting, but they were already standing there. So I felt like I was just kind of waiting around. It just didn't feel right to me. And I was offering it because I thought it's what I should be doing. So then when I finally got the confidence to actually just step into my power as an artist, realize how I thrive, where I thrive, and why, and I did that kind of self-reflection, that's when I had the confidence to say, no, I want to shoot weddings on my own. And I know that that's where my like secret power lies. And I believe that people, if I can just explain the value of why that is so valuable, then people will trust me and hire me and book me. So that is another great example. You don't have to have a second shooter if you don't want to have a second shooter, okay? But make sure you do it responsibly, right? There are things you have to have in place, like you have to make sure you have your backup gear, you have to make sure you have your backup lenses, make sure that you're shooting, with like a double card slot so that the first card backs up onto the second one, and you're being very responsible in that way. But I do want to actually mention something a little bit random, and this is to do with planners. And some of you might actually relate to this, those of you that also prefer to shoot on your own. I find that like as the amount I charge increases over time for documenting weddings, I notice that I'm starting to work with planners a little bit more. And I can tell that they are still uncomfortable and confused as to why I shoot alone, since it's industry standard for a second photographer to be there, right? But then what the beautiful thing is, and I love kind of like, shifting their perspective this way, when they receive their images from me that they can then use for their portfolio and stuff, they pretty much are like, okay, wow, Sarah, you were right. You were able to get all the angles and be there for every moment. And on top of that, document how the room was set up and the decor and the ceremony and all of that. So it just starts to shift their perspective, which I'm really excited about, because another thing that I've noticed is that I find that couples even tell me, oh, our planner said that we should, right, have a second photographer. So can you price it out with that, right? And it's like, I'm kind of on a mission to help our little photography industry with educating wedding planners that um, every single photographer works differently, and it's not a cut and paste situation that this photographer works better with a second photographer. It's just, it's not a one size fits all situation. And so, of course, I respond to the couple with my canned response of why I don't work with a second shooter and what's in it for them, what the benefits are for them. And they reply being like, oh, we never thought about it that way. Okay, that's amazing. No, we fully trust you. And yeah, that's great, right? But then I kind of, as the process unfolds with that couple and with the planner, I try to like just nudge and leave little hints along the way of like, oh yeah, like every photographer works differently, and not every single one works better with a second photographer. So I'm still trying to figure out how to like have these conversations actually where I can suggest being like, oh, just let the couple talk to the photographer about the second photographer option. Don't just say that they have to have it or they should have it, because then it'll put pressure on the couple to spend additional money and maybe it's not necessarily a need. And that conversation should just be left between the photographer and the couple. So yeah, I hope that we can all somehow lightly nudge, and planners are doing, like, obviously they're doing it out of like good intent. Like they want to make sure their couples are well taken care of. The day is amazingly documented, right? But yeah, I just want to somehow lightly nudge them into letting us have that conversation with the couples. So that was a little bit of a tangent, but yeah, that was another example just showing you what you don't have to offer if it doesn't feel aligned with you as an artist. And so I hope that after listening to this episode and hearing the different examples of other photographers doing things their way and me doing things my way, can be that example for you to show you that you can run a profitable photography business that you also love, right? That like just lights your soul on fire. Because like you have limitless possibilities and paths available to you on how you run your business. And the fun thing is you get to custom design that for yourself. So this is your reminder. Again, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do in your business. You are the architect. And since there are a limitless number of paths to your success, and again, whatever success means to you, no one else, right? You get to forge your own path and make it work on your terms. There is no one size fits all life, and that means there's no one size fits all path. So this is your reminder to get creative, make decisions that are aligned with your heart and soul. And I can tell you from experience that life and business is way, way, way more fun and effortless this way. All right, so that's the end of this episode. I hope you got a ton of value out of it. If you did, please screenshot it right now. And I would love it if you could tag me on Instagram at Sarah Monica Photo, just so I can see what you're enjoying, right? And so other photographers can find this show and get value out of it too, and we can all grow together. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you in the next episode. Yay! Thank you so much for hanging out with me and tuning into this episode. If you got value out of it, please feel free to message me on Instagram at Sarah Monica Photo. That's Sarah no H, Monica with a K, photo, to let me know. I get so freaking energized hearing from others that what I've said has had a positive impact on their lives. Also, make sure to hit subscribe to the Shine and Thrive podcast to never miss an episode. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm sending you all the productive vibes your way so you have the best week ever.